Number 5 on this list is Father Yerbain Grandeur. Father Yerbain Grandeur was born in 1590 in France and lived until 1634. He became a priest in the town of Loudun in 1617 and was a priest right up until he was burned at the stake in 1634. That's right guys, Father Yerbain Grandeur's story takes an ugly turn when he's linked to making some serious deals with the devil. Yerbain had some negative rumors start to circulate around him in 1629 when he was being accused of sleeping around with a lot of women. It was even thought that he was the father to a son of a married woman, however that was never 100% proven. The slander surrounding his name reached an all-time high when in 1632 allegations of demonic possession started to form. A group of nuns began having very strange and vivid dreams with Yerbain appearing in them. They also started acting very funny and not feeling like themselves. It all started with Mother Superior Jeanne d'Agnes. It's written that, unfortunately for the tortured nun, no amount of penance kept her dreams at bay and soon the other nuns followed in her footsteps. This plague of nightmares swept its way through all of these nuns and they all reported having Yerbain in their dreams. The nuns started to fling accusations at Father Yerbain Grandeur and said that he'd gotten a demon to possess them. The demon that most people link to this possession is Asmodeus, who's a prince of demons, a demon that represents lust. That being said, a bunch of other demons were tied to this possession as well. Zabalon, Iskarin, Astaroth, Gresil, Amand, the list goes on and on about the possible demon or demons that Father Yerbain Grandeur sent down to haunt these nuns. Considering his character was already getting called into question, it wasn't difficult for people to believe that he'd called upon Asmodeus to do his evil bidding. A trial took place following the reports, but the verdict of guilt was swift, and after some extensive torture, Father Yerbain Grandeur was put to death by being burned at the stake for making dealings with the devil. Number 4 on this list is from a Reddit user called Mary. They tell a very interesting story of how their friend got possessed by a demon in a newly purchased house and the ramifications of that. I think they do a good job telling this story, so for the purposes of this video, I'm going to quote their post. When I was in high school, my friend moved into a farmhouse. That house had a barn and a basement with stairs that led to nowhere. The previous owner killed himself in the barn because, and they put this in quotations here, the resident told me to. When moving into this house, my friend would never step into the barn. Not once would she even walk towards it. We thought it would be fun to have a seance because we were young and stupid. We had the candles and everything. I was sitting next to Katie, the one who lived there, and all of a sudden, when asking if whoever was there could show themselves, Katie then squeezed my hand so hard. The candlelight wavered and she turned her head so slow to meet my eyes. What she said I will never forget. Let's go to the barn. Someone's there who wants to talk to us. I let go of her hand and stood up. My other friends there turned on the lights and she blinked at us. What happened? To this day, she can't remember that night. A week after our seance, her dad was found in that barn. He shot himself, and in his letter he said, "I'm sorry, I had to listen," as if something had told him to do it. This is a true story. It could have been coincidences back to back, but it will always scare me. So that's a really interesting story, and it reminded me of a tale that we talked about on this channel previously. In Scotland, many centuries ago, the settlers of the area defied a witch by taking over her land and not upholding the bargain that they'd struck with her. They eventually went on to kill her. This caused this witch to haunt the area, and most specifically the barn that was there. Now, we don't know where this place was, and I would find it an overwhelming coincidence if this happened to be the same Scottish barn, but I wouldn't be surprised if a similar story is what caused a demon to haunt this place. Sadly, I couldn't find out exactly who the demon was in the place the Reddit user described, but it's possible that it has been there for hundreds of years, preying on anyone who enters its lair.
In at number 3, Koschi. Koschi is often given the nickname of the Immortal or the Deathless and comes from popular Russian folklore. The story goes that a spell is cast on a man which prevents him from being killed. He hides his soul inside nested objects to protect it. The origin of this demon is unknown but contains elements from the 12th century pagan leader Khan Konchak, who is recorded in the Tales of Igor's campaign. Over time, a balanced view of the non-Christian human Khan, who dates back to the 12th century but may have been slightly distorted by Christian Slavic writers. By the 18th century and likely earlier, the legend of this demon had been appearing in Slavic tales. This demon has the ability to cast sleep spells on their foes and can only be broken by playing on enchanted gusli. Depending on the tale, he has different characteristics. He may ride a 3- or 7-legged horse, may have tusks or fangs, or may possess a variety of different magic objects like cloaks and rings. It is positive though that this demon possesses many magic powers, making humans frightened of coming in contact with this demon. The humans who are the most most scared of this demon are young women, because he tends to menace women with his magical powers. There are various versions of the Koschi demon, and have been made into terrifying fairy tales all over the world in places like Greece, Albania, Croatia, Serbia, Hungary, and Lithuania. Many people who are soon to be wed are terrified that their soon to be wives will be taken or killed by Koschi, so many of them stay hidden with their beloved until their wedding day to ensure the safety of their soon to be wives. Many stay away from Europe for their weddings and honeymoons because of this demon, to ensure the safety of their loved ones. In at 2 we have Strigoi. Strigoi is a terrifying demon from Romanian mythology and are troubled spirits that are said to have risen from the grave to prey on the living. It is believed that they have the ability to transform into an animal, become invisible, and gain vitality from the blood of their victims. Bram Stoker's Dracula has been the modern interpretation of the Strigoi through the historic links with vampirism. One of the earliest members of historical Strigoi was Grandeur Alelovic from the region of Istria. This villager was believed to be the first real person to be labelled as a vampire because he was referred to as a Strigoi. Dur is said to have terrorized his former village for 16 years after his death. Eventually he was decapitated by the local priests and villagers to let the terror subside. Johann Weikard von Valvassor wrote about Dur's life and afterlife in his extensive work The Glory of the Duchy of Carnoila when he visited Kringa during his travels. This was the first written document on vampires in relation to the demon Strigoi. An 1865 article in Transylvanian folklore by Wilhelm Schmidt describes Strigoi as nocturnal creatures that prey on infants and haunts the nearby villages, stalking women waiting for them to give birth so they can sneak into their home and steal their babies. In 1909, writer Franz Harman mentioned this demon in a book, saying that the peasant children from a village in the Carpathian Mountains started to pass away mysteriously. The villagers began to suspect their recently deceased count-turned-bloodthirsty demon was the one causing these mysterious deaths. A common way used to identify the Strigoi was to place a young child dressed in white on a white horse near the graveyard at midday. It was believed that the horse would stop at the grave of the suspected demon. And finally, in at number 1 we have Culm King. One of the scariest demons from Europe is that of the Culm King. This creature comes from Estonian mythology and is the evil protector of the forest, eating children alive when they bother forest spirits. Not only do they prey on children, but they terrorize anyone that comes in contact with them, being able to possess people, turning them into devils, and causing havoc as lesser personifications of evil. They like to haunt and terrorize grown-ups who happen to cross paths with it while walking the dark forest around Europe. It is the restless ghost of an unholy dead, and you run the risk of being harassed everywhere in the wild because the Culm King doesn't have a fixed haunting place. To make it even worse, many believe this creature has the ability to go through the body of humans, and if this happens, that person becomes evil, thus creating a legion of killers. This terrifying demon can appear in many different forms, including a dog, a cat, and a haystack. Some of the more sinister and possibly accurate descriptions of the Culm King are they look like a demonic polar bear, white sharp spikes running down their backs, and sharp teeth and claws that cause death immediately. Yes, this demon is a protector of the forest, but to us humans it is similar to the devil and takes no prisoners. If you're venturing in the forest, I would be very careful to not encounter this creature, and if you do, be respectful of the forest and its habitat, if you don't want to escape alive. Not only does this demon frequent public places, but can also enter private places without invitation, a trait that can be found in other folklore monsters, such as vampires and certain types of ghosts. Anyone who enters the woods in Eastern Europe worries if the Culm King could be lurking nearby. Coming in at number 5 we have Ribasol. Ribasol or Rubasol is a folklore mountain spirit of the Giant Mountains, a mountain range along the border between the historical lands of Bohemia and Silesia. This demon is the subject of many different legends and fairy tales throughout German folklore. Legend has it that Rubasol is a giant gnome or mountain spirit. With good people he can be friendly, teaches them about medicine, and gives presents, but if someone disobeys or disrespects him, his revenge is severe and can be deadly. He sometimes plays the role of a trickster in folk tales. The origin story of Rubasol comes from pagan times, and he is known as a fantastic lord of weather of the mountains and is similar to the Wild Hunt, which are a group that roam the sky during storms and is an omen of disaster. This demon has the ability to change the weather drastically. He can send rain, lightning, thunder, and snow from the mountain to the lands below. Rubasol takes the appearance of a monk in a grey frock, holds a string instrument in his hand, which is known as the storm harp, and walks so heavily that the earth shakes around him. Others believe the demon inhabits that of a large bear and wolves to blend in with the other animals on the mountains. In the area surrounding his mountain there is a large botanical garden named after the demon, named Rubasol's Garden. In the Czech Republic, local fairy tales say that Rubasol gives sourdough to people and invented traditional regional soup named kaisalo. There is also a mountain named Kotel, which means cauldron. When fog rises from the valley at the bottom of the Kotel, people say that's when Rubicel is cooking the kaisalo soup. To this day, this demon's legend lives on. Coming in at number 4, we have Adan. Adan or Afank is a demon originating from British, Welsh, and Celtic mythology. It's said to look like a beaver, crocodile, or dwarf-like demon and are about 7 feet long and weigh around 250 pounds. They prey upon those who are foolish enough to enter the lake it lives in. This demon once lived in Llyn Bafog or in Llyn Lion Lake, and it can be lured out of the water by a woman, and once this happens, Adan becomes powerless. There are some stories of this demon being destroyed. One tells of a man dragging the beast out of the water to slay it, another says it was lured out of the water, where it eventually fell asleep and was bound in chains and slayed, but many believe this demon still roams in the lakes of Europe. The Adank is a solitary predator that builds dams to create smaller lakes, but still a part of the larger lake it lives in. Once they find the right place for a habitat, it's their territory and theirs only. Anything that comes near the lake or the adjoining rivers becomes this demon's prey. The Adank hunts its prey by floating just under the surface of the water, waiting for its next meal to approach, and when it does, they attack with a bone-crushing bite. And once they have their prey in their mouth, the Adank then drags them under the water and goes in for the kill. They wait for the prey at their most vulnerable and takes advantage of that. Like a beaver den, the Adank's lair can only be accessed from below the water's surface, but is truly hideous sight because they use the remains of its victims for decoration of their habitat, and the stench of decay lingers all around the demon's lair. According to many historical writings between 1382 and 1410, it describes the mass destruction of Adank and how he can cause massive flooding, and one time in particular, the floods caused all the original inhabitants of Britain except for Dwyfyn and Dwyfach, who went on to find a new race of Britons. This demon is recognized by many throughout Europe and the world and is mentioned in many different books and TV shows.
Number 3 on this list is dragons. Now I know that dragons aren't technically demons, but they are pretty bloody terrifying in my opinion, and for that reason I think they deserve some love on this list. Italy has quite the history with dragons and has had some pretty big ones in the past. Dragon's Wish says, one of the most famous dragons of Italian folklore is Tyrus, a wyvern that besieged Tourney in the Middle Ages. One day, a young and brave knight of the noble house of Cittadini, tired of witnessing the death of his fellow citizens and depopulation of Tourney, faced the dragon and killed him. The town, from that day onwards, adopted the dragon in its coat of arms and accompanied by a Latin inscription, Tyrus e annis dederent signa terraminis, that stands under the banner of the town of Tourney, honoring this legend. This is just the most famous legend of a dragon in Italy, but it doesn't mean that it's the only one. There have been other reports of dragons in Italy as well, and some of them have been very scary. At the end of the day, a dragon, in my opinion, is just as bad, if not worse, than a demon. If I had to go one-on-one versus a dragon or a demon, I might try my luck with the demon, guys, because there's no way I'm going to be able to survive the dragon. Number 2 on this list is the Lariosoro. This creature is an evil serpent living in one of Italy's big bodies of water, and it's said to be a servant of the devil. Yoair writes, meet Lariosoro, Italy's own Loch Ness monster. According to Italian folklore, Lariosoro lives in Lake Como, which lies 30 miles to the north of Milan and is one of the deepest European lakes. In November 1946, 2 hunters claimed that they saw a huge animal resembling a reptile swimming in the lake. It had red scales and was about 12 meters in length. Upon firing their rifles, Italy's Nessie disappeared into the center of the lake with a hissing sound. The creature was named after Lariosauros balsami, a prehistoric reptile whose fossilized remains were discovered in the lake in 1830. More sightings followed at the lake. In 1954, a creature with a round muzzle and webbed paws was spotted by a father and his son. Then, in August 1957, another monster was allegedly seen by natives. A month later, in the same year, an animal was spotted in the lake, this time whose head resembled that of a crocodile. The last sighting was in 2003, and it looked more like a giant eel. It's got tons of different forms, and no one knows exactly what form it will show up as next. One thing is clear though, it's guarding whatever is at the bottom of this lake. Some people think that the devil has some type of gate there, or that he's working on creating a gate. Until the gate is fully functional and ready to bring creatures from hell to our world, the devil has employed the capabilities of this underwater beast to guard it. This is all just a theory, but no one knows for sure, so we should probably do some digging pretty soon, folks, and figure out what's going on underneath the water. And number 1 on this list is the Ferocious Beast. I wish I had a more descriptive name for you guys, but that is literally what it has been called. The Ferocious Beast. This is a demon creature that resembled a wolf and was around several hundred years ago. An enormous animal similar to a wolf, it ate pets and children and terrorized Milan during the 1790s, and the Milanese organized a hunt against it. After months, they killed the Ferocious Beast and displayed its body at the university at Pavia, but it's no longer there and has been missing for decades. Informal sources claim it was stolen, destroyed during World War II, or removed specifically by German actions during that war. So there are a lot of rumors that have circulated about what actually happened to this beast, but something that wasn't brought up there was that it still might be alive. Yes, it was killed back in the day, but now with this pelt mysteriously vanishing, people are thinking that this thing could have come back to life. Now this would have been with the help of the devil himself. The legend says that the devil realized how deadly this beast was to us humans. He saw some serious potential here and didn't want to let it go to waste. So he finally decided to come back and claim the pelt and then bring this thing back to life, but as a servant of the devil. Now its main goal is to serve as a demonic hellhound and claim as many bodies as it can before it's killed once again. Although killing it a second time is going to be a lot harder, considering now it has demonic abilities to go along with it. Number 5 on this list is the Lakinon. These are tricky demons, and if they approach you, then you need to be very wary. Wikipedia says the Lakinons are a race of elf-like creatures in Philippine mythology. In Visayans, they were believed to be handsome and beautiful creatures that resemble nobles and monarchs of the pre-Hispanic Philippines. They dwell on Dalakit trees, hence the name Lakinon, which literally means from the Dalakit or Dakit tree. This mythological race exhibits sexual dimorphism, the men having light-colored skin and very dark hair, and women having bronze-brown skin and brown hair. Stories say that they have leaf-shaped pointy ears, depicted in modern times as gothic, like tall, handsome males and beautiful females. They dress in fashionable manner, live in the haunted house-like mansions, and try to fit in with mortal people. Some believe that the only way to Dalakit, their dwelling place, is by entering the Dalakit trees. These creatures abduct people and take them back to this world. They hold a feast for their victims and force them to eat the black rice that then puts them under their spell, making them their slaves. So that sounds like the actual worst. You get taken to their mystical land and then forced to eat this rice, which, I mean, I can only imagine is going to be something really gross, because then it makes you their slave. My question is, what the hell does becoming their slave even entail? Like, what is this world that I now live in, and what is it that I have to do here? I guess I'm in some evil elf-like hell or something, but that doesn't really sound like a great time. The biggest problem with this is that you need to be super vigilant, or else it's very likely that they could get you. If you don't notice those pointy ears, then that could be game over, guys. Number 4 on this list is the Amalen Hig. The Amalen Hig are sort of like the Philippines version of a zombie. Myths and folklore says, in the Philippine mythology, the Amalen Hig or Maran Hig are flightless aswang that came back to life after death. They rise from their grave after failing to pass their power to a relative. Upon rising from the grave, these Amalen Hig lurk in the woods and live as bloodsuckers. At night, they go to nearby villages to prey on the residents using their sharp, pointed tongue. Aside from the Amalen Hig of Aswang origins, some deceased humans could also turn into Amalen Hig. These are people who died with unfinished business or were murdered and came back for revenge. The Amalen Hig with unfinished business are relentless in pursuing the persons they have chosen to fulfill their goals. Avenging Amalen Hig tickle their victims to death while sucking their life force. According to one legend a long time ago, before the Spaniards came to the Philippines, a chieftain ordered his priestess to create an army of warriors that couldn't be killed. These immortals were created by killing ordinary men and encrusting their bodies with dark soot, putting a strange pebble in their mouths and doing other rituals. After 3 days, they came back to life, but they were mindless, walking corpses that only died after accomplishing their task. They had me right up until I learned that they tickle their victims to death. Like, don't get me wrong, I still do not want to run into something like this, but I guess it's just hard to be scared of something that's gonna tickle me to death. The whole sucking my life force thing, yeah, that sounds like the worst. I don't want any part of that. But tickling? Really? We couldn't have come up with any other way of murdering people, guys?
Number 3, like father, like son. Duxbury, Massachusetts. 2021, huh? A 19-year-old man is charged in the death of his father. Apparently the boy told police that he was baptizing his father at a Massachusetts pond to exorcise out his demons. Okay. Modern times call for modern solutions, I guess. And this one, a modern weird one. Jack Callahan, the 19-year-old kid, choked back tears in court as he listened to prosecutors describe the moment divers pulled the bloated body of his father, 57-year-old Scott Callahan, from a Massachusetts pond, lifeless. The young man told investigators that he and his father went to the pond around midnight after he picked up his father from a Boston bar. He says that his mother did not want the intoxicated ex-husband of the family home that night as he had been acting somewhat strange lately. After conversations from the son and father, Jack, feeling helpless and confused about his situation, tried to take matters into his own hands. He is now facing a murder charge in relation to his father's death and is still under investigation. Both the prosecution and defense say Scott Callahan had a long history of substance abuse and suffered from the aftermath of traumatic brain injuries, and that from overuse of medicinal drugs might have taken the man's mind. According to Jack at the pond, his father became combative with him, punched him repeatedly in the face, claiming that he had not been in control of his own body, and was assured that his father wasn't really aware of what he was doing in the moment. The 19-year-old then decided to baptize his father in an attempt to exorcise the demon, which resulted in drowning him. That's a hard one to swallow. It's also got some biblical feel to it, you know? Father, son, bonding over paranoia. Scott Callahan was found in the water about 50 feet away from the shore in the pond, short time after the baptism and attempted exorcism happened. He was taken to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. There is an open investigation on this one still, and the young man is sticking to his story. What do you think? Possession? Number 2, Warren, Massachusetts. This New England tragedy was apparently what laid out the structure of the Conjuring movies. I'm terrified just reading that, and I guess we're gonna find out why. 11-year-old David Glatzel was only 10 when he reported beginning having hallucinations and delusions. From around 79 to 82, the boy's suffering worsened, causing severe trauma in the family. According to his family, efforts by Catholic priests and others to relieve the boy of what they said were multiple demonic possessions. Multiple. Things started getting interesting, however, surrounding the family after an aggressive, bloody confrontation in 1981. Arn Johnson, boyfriend of David's older sister, Deborah, stabbed his landlord to death multiple times in Brookfield. New England paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren later claimed that Johnson had actually challenged the demon inside David's body to leave the young boy and enter him instead. This guy's a hero, man. Unfortunately, a deadly one at that. That argument was the basis of the devil made me do it defense at Johnson's trial in Danbury with the Superior Court. The Warrens claimed that the man showed all signs of possession, including growling, speaking in strange voices, violent acts, and talkings of the beast. This is a wild case and sparked huge controversy in court after murder charges were forever changed with the claim that the devil made me do it would be lawfully excused. He was released from prison in 1985. And coming in at number 1, the Dover Demon. Probably the most famous of all these cases. 17-year-old William Bartlett claimed that while driving on April 21st, 1977, he saw a large-eyed creature with huge sharp fingers and glowing eyes on top of a broken stone wall on Farm Street in Dover, Massachusetts. 15-year-old John Baxter reported seeing a similar creature on Miller Hill Road the same evening. Another 15-year-old, Abby Brabham, Cunningham claimed to have seen the creature the following night on Springdale Avenue. 3 in one night, huh? The teenagers all drew sketches of the alleged creature. Bartlett wrote on his sketch, "I, Bill Bartlett, swear on a stack of Bibles that I saw this creature." And according to the Boston Globe, some suggest that the creature may have just been a large foal or moose calf. Nah, definitely not. With wings and fingers like that, I don't think so. Police told the Associated Press that creatures reported by the teenagers were probably nothing more than a school vacation hoax. I don't know. It's been about 45 years since the sightings of the creature that came to be known as the Dover Demon, and still remains one of Massachusetts' truly great mysteries and one of the world's great cryptid cases. And coming in number 5, the Picetto family possession. During the year of 1981, home in Lee, Massachusetts, was riddled by paranormal activity that surged through every room in this house. Louis and Dale Picetto, an average hardworking American couple, along with their 2 children, endured occurrences that nearly destroyed them, literally. The devout Catholics lived peacefully in the house that had been their family home for decades. It wasn't until 2 years after moving in that the demonic signs started showing. On March 19th, Mrs. Picetto began receiving nightly visits from a white orb that took the shape of a non-threatening young boy who spoke in a very soft voice. Doesn't sound that bad. While the apparition was gentle, the Picettos felt that they should rid their home of such supernatural entity, and a priest eventually came in to perform a ritual. Mr. and Mrs. Picetto believed their troubles were over after this, but unfortunately, this only caused more demonic occurrences to start. In place of the sweet ghost boy grew an unearthly creature hunched over and dressed in a black robe. Scary. Mrs. Picetto claimed that the specter would say vulgar and nasty things, growling, saying it called itself the Minister of God. It wasn't just the verbal attacks that were happening, however, no. During the sleepless nights, Mrs. Picetto claimed that she suffered claw marks both on her back, stomach, breasts, and face after being dragged around the bedroom. Mr. Picetto attests to this and said that he watched in horror as the bed levitated above him, Mrs. Picetto on it. Terrifying, dude. Refrigerators were ripped from walls, metal bookcases turned over to the floor, and in one case, a crucifix was even yanked from the hand of their 14-year-old son. The Picettos reached out to medical professionals for help, but they rejected their experiences, calling them exaggerated. It wasn't until Mr. and Mrs. Picetto turned to professionals Ed and Lorraine Warren, self-proclaimed demonologists, that were called to help. The Ghostbusters themselves. As the founders of the New England Society for Psychic Research in the 50s, Mr. and Mrs. Warren devoted their life to the supernatural. When the Warrens visited the Picettos, they instantly detected signs of paranormal activity pulsing from the home. In a description eerily similar to the film Poltergeist, which came out the following summer in '82, Mrs. Warren says that she saw many small ghost lights move around the room until they combined to create a towering, shadowy figure. A priest was brought in to perform the ritual. The basement apparently then filled with smoke during the exorcism, and when the ritual was complete, the Warrens deemed the house clear of evil. The Picetto family moved back in and reported no further activity since. And in 2004, the family moved out and on and left this once haunted house for someone else to deal with. I understand. Number 4, Elizabeth Knapp. The possession of Elizabeth Knapp, October 30th, 1671 to January 12th, 1672, is a unique and weird one in the aspect that it was approached from a more scientific aspect than religious, and being of that time, somewhat of a new methodology. Knapp's father was the servant at a household of Samuel Willard, a prominent reverend in the Church of Groton. When Elizabeth Knapp, a member of his own household, began to show signs of demonic possession, Willard took a carefully and yet scientific approach to the situation, which was rare for the 17th century Puritan. After these scary events took place, they could provide no explanation for her episodic fits. He declared that it was a case of possession. Throughout the entire process, he notes in his journal, Knapp seemed to have most violent fits when Willard was present beside her. Willard states that Knapp at first began to complain of pains in her body. She would grab certain parts of her body such as her legs or breasts and would scream out, talking about feelings of strangulation. She would even sometimes laugh to the point of hysterical fits, weeping or screaming out. Hallucinations followed shortly after the outbursts, and on many occasions she claimed to see 2 people constantly walking around her bed. Strange claims like this constantly seeing men floating above her bed as well. This happened particularly at night, including some convulsings on the ground. Willard then documented on the night of November 2nd, 1671, Knapp made a confession of meeting up with the devil. Uh-oh. The old sign at the crossroads deal, huh? She stated that for 3 years the devil had been meeting her, promising her money, youth, and the ability to see the world. She then claimed that he had presented her with a book of blood covenant, which was signed by other women as well. And on the night of November 28th, in which she had a fit lasting for 48 hours straight, she was in a coma state until she made the pact with the devil himself. Witnesses document strange, deep voices and animal sounds coming from her. After Willard stopped entries to his journal, things get a little messy. It has been a historical mystery what happened to Knapp, as we are still unsure to this day exactly what remained of her. Was she tried and hanged for witchcraft, or simply disappeared on the promise of seeing the world? You tell me.
Number 3 on this list is La Cocana. La Cocana, believe it or not, is a barn animal. Yeah, we're looking at a demon who is literally a barn animal here, folks. Pepe's Chile writes, in this Chilean legend, a woman deceived her family by being a housewife during the day and a witch at night. She would use potions to turn herself into various animals and play while her family slept, then use another potion to turn herself back into a human when morning came. One night, she forgot to make sure the children were asleep and they saw her turn into a sheep. As she ran off to play, the children wanted to imitate her and turn themselves into foxes. When they couldn't turn back into children, their cries woke their father. Seeing what had happened, the father threw all the potions into the river in a rage. When the wife came home, she couldn't turn herself back into a human and was doomed to remain a sheep forever. So you're probably thinking to yourself, great, the witch is no more, she's a barn animal now, what can she even do? Well, it's believed that this demon, goat, witch woman is the worst omen that you can see in South America. Sheep are a pretty common animal, but if you happen to set eyes upon this particular sheep, then horrible luck will befall you and your loved ones. Terrible tragedies that you can't even imagine or don't even want to begin to think about. So, how are you going to know that you've seen this sheep when there are so many others in South America? Apparently, you're gonna just know. Every demonic encounter that I've read about talks of people feeling that horrible sense of foreboding and a terrible presence. Apparently, something similar happens here. Time slows, and as you make eye contact with that demonic barn animal, you know that something horrible is about to happen. There's really nothing you can do to avoid this one, it's just sort of luck of the draw. Hopefully, La Cocana doesn't pick you. Number 2 on this list is Besta Pharah. Besta Pharah is absolutely deadly, guys, and one of the most visually striking demons on this list. TV Tropes writes, Besta Pharah, translated to bestial beast, the Besta Pharah is a horse with a human torso, believed to either be a servant of or the devil himself, who leaves hell through cemeteries during full moon nights to brand people with his mark, which dooms them to hell. Some legends say that instead of marking people, its sight causes them to go insane, but only for a few days. It's also said that it roams forest areas in search of a blood-soaked red flower, and that when he finds it, he disappears. Blood-soaked red flower. No idea what that is, and I don't think I even really want to know either, guys. This is not the creature that you want to run into if you're chilling in South America. This may even be the devil himself for all we know. Artists' renditions of this creature are truly terrifying, and we don't actually have any photographs of the beast because anyone who gets close to it doesn't make it out alive. Stay away from Besta Pharah at all costs. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Wake of Foo. The Wake of Foo is a horrible demon that you can find in Argentina. Maxgax writes, this legend comes from the Mapuche people of Argentina and Chile. According to them, the Wake of Foo is a harmful spirit or demon. When they were introduced to Christianity, the Wake of Foo were said to inhabit people as well as being free-form spirits. They can alternate between a human and an animal form too. They're aimed to enslave the souls of the dead, and they take great pleasure in spreading diseases and killing people. They were said to come from the west and had no soul. They were said to enter our world as a consequence of battles with the Pilan spirits, which resulted in the destruction of the perfect harmony of the world. They have the power to capture and enslave the spirits of the recently dead if it is reluctant to leave the body and transform into a greater spirit. If they do manage to trap a spirit in this way, they can use them to hurt other people. In this way, the Wake of Foo have feared entities. Not only can they enslave your soul and rob you of an afterlife, they can use you to hurt others, perhaps even your own family and friends, and many feel this fate is truly worse than death. Now, what I want to know, folks, and I don't think there's any way to find this out without getting enslaved, but what does it feel like to be under their control. Are you aware that you're under their control? Do you recognize the actions that you're doing when you do them, or are you just a mindless dummy who's a shell of your former self? Personally, if I ever was to get attacked by one of these things, I would prefer the latter. If this demon forced me to kill or harm my family and loved ones, and I was aware of what I was doing, then yeah, that is way worse than death. Trapped in your own mental prison, having to watch as you hurt the ones that you care about, it's no wonder this demon is so feared in Argentina and why the locals have tried to do everything they can to avoid it. Number 5 on this list is El Coco. El Coco is a demon that is said to specifically go after children living in South America. This is a story that is told to children all over the continent to ensure that they go to sleep when they're supposed to. Villains Wiki says, Coco is a monster who exists to enforce taboos and ensure that children sleep when told. For, should children disobey orders to sleep, Coco is said to hunt them down and may inflict a number of gruesome punishments upon them depending on the story. Usually he's said to eat the children or spirit them away, never to be seen again. Coco may also emerge as a female known as La Coca. The two beings are seen as extensions of the same monster, and as such the Coca is little more than Coco taking a female guise, and vice versa. Both share the exact same motives and terrible behaviors. While a force of punishment, Coco is also an opportunist and is said to outright kidnap and devour any disobedient he can find. This is seen as further proof that children should mind their manners and always obey their elders in case a lurking Coco happens upon them misbehaving and captures them for a nightmarish fate. El Coco, El Coca, really doesn't matter which one you get because they're both gonna destroy you if you're a and you disobey your parents. Now, this is probably just a story told by parents to frighten their children into doing what they want them to do. But if there is some legitimacy to this, then this is by far one of the worst demons in South America. To kidnap and kill little for not going to sleep when they're supposed to is pretty horrible. If I was a kid and I heard this story, I'd be so scared to go to sleep on time that I probably wouldn't be able to fall asleep on time. Thank goodness I grew up in North America and didn't have to deal with El Coco. Number 4 on this list is La Vidita. This demon is specifically out here hunting for the men. Max Gax writes, this is a common tale across Latin America, including Argentina. La Vidita is known as the Black Widow. She's said to be a beautiful woman, veiled and dressed in black from head to toe, who walks in the streets after midnight. She tries to get drunk men to her house. If she succeeds, it's then and only then that she will take off her veil to reveal that her face is nothing more than the grotesque skull. The sight is said to be so horrific that the men are quite literally scared to death as the woman lets out a shriek of hair-raising laughter. For those that survive, they awake at dawn, usually lying in a puddle or covered by thistles and swearing to never party until late again. Let me tell you guys, I am the type of individual who likes to go out. In fact, I do it most weekends. If I was several beverages deep and some pretty lady takes her face off, that's it folks, I'm done. There is literally no more Nicholas Playlog after that. I have no idea why this demon does what it does, but it means that every Argentinian gentleman had better be on the watch for something like this when it flips over to 2 AM at the club. Also, no one has any idea what the thistles are doing there or why you're covered in a puddle. So clearly something pretty terrible happens after you pass out with this demon as well. Probably something that I don't even want to know about. Number 3 on this list is the Pugot. I get serious Stranger Things Demogorgon vibes with this next demon creature. Myths and folklore says, in the Philippine mythology, the Pugot, which translates to the decapitated one, is a mythical fiend that's found in the Ilocos region. It can assume various shapes such as hogs, dogs, or even as humans. However, it usually appears as a black, gigantic, headless being. The creature usually resides in dark places or deserted houses. However, they especially like living in trees such as the duhot, santol, and tamarind. Aside from its shape-shifting abilities, the Pugot can also move at great speeds, feeding on snakes and insects that it finds among the trees. It feeds by thrusting food through its neck stump. Although terrifying, the Pugot is relatively harmless. However, the creature is fond of women's underwear and steals them when they're being dried on a clothesline. The Pugot is also found in the Il Fuego myth Tulod Nimputo, the self-beheaded, where he appears to the human hero. He was fed by the hero with chopped chicken meat that was mixed with blood. So I guess the good thing about this is that even though it has incredible power and speed and could be super dangerous, it chooses not to be. Well, unless you're a pair of ladies' underwear, in which case you might be in for it. Actually though, what is up with these Philippines demons? They're just kind of plain creepy, guys. Like, we had the tickle zombie and now we have the headless Demogorgon panty thief. I swear that this legend was just made up by like some super weird guy just as an excuse for why their neighbor's underwear kept going missing. Number 2 on this list is the Batty Bat. This is a very dangerous demon and one that you do not want to piss off. Myths and folklore says in the Philippine mythology, the Batty Bat or Bangungot is a vengeful demon found in Ilocano folklore. These demons were blamed as the cause of the fatal nocturnal disease called Bangungot. They usually come in contact with humans when the tree that they reside in is felled and made into a support post for a house. This causes them to migrate into holes found in the post. The Batty Bat forbids humans from sleeping near its post. When a person does sleep near it, the Batty Bat transforms to its true form and then attacks that person. It sits upon the chest of its victim until he suffocates. To ward off the Batty Bat, one should bite one's thumb or wiggle one's toes. In this way, the person will awaken from the nightmare induced by the Batty Bat. Once again, guys, we just have one of the scariest demons here with also the weirdest caveat attached to it. To ward this thing off, we need to wiggle our toes? Like, are you actually kidding me? I mean, at least this one doesn't steal panties, I guess, so, I mean, that's a thing. Also, this one, unlike some of the others, is actually very deadly. You could easily die from this thing if you're unable to wiggle your toes, which would actually be rather hard considering you're going to be asleep when this thing attacks, you know, so it could be game over. I could totally see how if I was living in the Philippines, this thing would be one of my biggest fears. Like, I would exclusively be living in like a brick house or something. No wooden posts for me. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Ek. This one had to be number 1, and when you hear what it does and how it operates, you'll understand why. Wikipedia says in Philippine mythology, Ek are bird-like human creatures. They are winged humans who search for victims at night. They hunger for flesh and blood. They're usually described as flying creatures that look like the Menangle but are unable to divide or split their body in the way that that one does. The Ek is also associated with the Walk because of some similar characteristics. The only difference between a Walk and Ek is that Ek has a bird-like bill whereas the Walk has none. The Ek can transform into a huge bird or bat at night to prowl in the form of. Similar to the Menangle, the Ek looks for sleeping pregnant women. Then it extends a very long proboscis into the womb and kills the fetus by draining its blood. It's said that while this is taking place, a Ek sound is often heard. The Ek fools people into thinking that it's far off in the distance by producing a faint sound when it's actually really near. What the actual heck, guys? Most of these other demons are derpy dudes looking for underwear and tickles, but this thing? This is for real. Fetuses and blood draining and just no, I don't want it. How on earth does the Philippines grow in population with these things roaming around? I'd be too scared of having this thing come attack in the middle of the night. And tons of people feel the same way. Many rituals and services are done to try to ward off these creatures. I hope that some of these work, because if they don't, consequences could be dire.
Coming in at number 5, we have the Villa. The Villa are Eastern Europe's nymphs or mountain fairies who can be found living in hills and mountains. Some versions of folklore claim that the Villa live up in the clouds, but throughout history these creatures are almost always spotted in the wilderness in all versions of folklore. These mysterious creatures are believed to have power over the wind, and they are credited with causing windstorms that can wreak havoc on the surrounding communities and urban structures. Those who claim to have seen the Villa say that they appear as beautiful women who sparkle in dresses made of leaves and flowers, while others claim they are ghost-like creatures wrapped in long cloaks or rich blue robes. Unlike many of the creepy creatures who haunt the forests and homes of Eastern Europe, the Villa are beautiful and feminine, but don't let their appearance fool you. While many believe they are helpful creatures, many people throughout Europe claim they are destructive and use their appearance for their gain. They are known to tempt men to dance with them, then rob and kill them, and then hide their bodies in the clouds or throughout the dense wilderness. These demons are incredibly strong and powerful, powerful and are known to end the lives of men who defy them or break promises. You'll know that you are in the territory of the villa if you see deep rings in the grass. This is the sign that the villa has danced in one spot. It is said that treading on the rings will bring bad luck, so avoid them at all costs if you ever discover them in the woods. If you're planning a trip to the Eastern European area, I would definitely avoid camping or anything to do with the woods, due to many demons living and lurking in the forests around Europe. Many locals like to leave peace offerings for these demons. Things like ribbons, fruit, cake, flowers, and vegetables are often left on the hills where lighting is known to strike. When locals want to venture into the woods, they hope that these peace offerings will bring them luck and keep them safe from the villas. In at number 4 we have Nikolave. The Nikolave is a horse-like demon from Arcadian mythology that combines equine and human elements, originating from the Orkney Islands in the Northern Isles of Scotland. Also has the origins in Norse mythology, and British folklorist Catherine Briggs called it the nastiest of all the demons of Scotland's Northern Isles. This demon's breath was thought to wilt crops and sicken livestock, and the creature was held responsible for droughts and epidemics on lands even though it's predominantly a sea dweller. This demon could cause mass destructions for the locals across land and sea, which is why many believe it to be the most terrifying of all the demons throughout Europe. A graphic description of the Nikolave as it appears on land was given by an islander who claimed to have come in contact with the demon, but many accounts describe the details of the creature's appearance as inconsistent. Many believe they have many similarities to other sea monsters. This demonic creature is destructive to many humans and the environment, but it's believed throughout the summer months it is kept confined by the Mither o' the Sea, an ancient Orcadian spirit, who is the only one that can control the Nikolave. Orcadian folklore has a strong Scandinavian influence, and it may be that the Nikolave is a composite of a water horse from Celtic mythology, and a creature imported by the Norsemen. As with malevolent entities such as the Kelpie, it possibly offered an explanation for incidents that islanders in ancient times could not otherwise understand. This demon has terrorized the sea and land throughout Europe for centuries, and according to Orkney resident and folklorist Walter Trail Dennison, Nikolave means the devil of the sea. Many people think this demon is only able to thrive in the waters but can in fact roam the land for some time. According to an encounter with this demon, on land it appears to have the torso of a man which is attached to a horse's back. It has no legs but large arms that can reach the ground. When it's back in the water, it is unknown what it looks like specifically, but it resembles a large, hideous sea creature.
Number 3 on this list is the demon Dagon. This demon was prevalent in possessing people during what we call now the Louveniers' possessions. This was a series of demonic possessions that occurred at the Louveniers convent in 1647. In this instance, 18 separate individuals claimed that they had been possessed by a demon. This all started with 18-year-old sister Amalen Hig. She was the first victim of these demonic possessions and was the first one to come forward about her story. Up until that point, her life had been very hard and she was often mistreated growing up. If what she claims was actually true, then that mistreatment carried over into her adulthood as well. Father Thomas Boule was the current leader of the convent and succeeded Father Mathurin Picard for the title. Father Mathurin Picard had died earlier that year. However, it was said that both men were responsible for having demons possess these nuns, with Father Picard's spirit being present during the proceedings. It was reported that these two men took Sister Madeleine Bavent to a witch's sabbat, and when they were there, married her to the devil and had him perform sexual acts with her. This was accompanied by the disembowelment and murder of 2 other men that were present at this ritual. Madeleine referred to the devil as Dagon and said that that was the name that he had given to himself. After Madeleine came forth, so did a bunch of other nuns as well. The count finally got up to 18 of them who had come forward, and they all told a similar tale. There were also reports of these nuns speaking in tongues, contorting their bodies, and levitating, just as somebody might if they were possessed by a demon. Public exorcisms were held, and the entire town showed up to watch as these nuns were exorcised of the demons that had been forced upon them. Father Thomas Brule was in the thick of it now, and there was nothing to save him from being burnt at the stake. However, it's also interesting to note that Madeleine Bavent was also sent to the dungeons to live out the rest of her days. I'm not really sure the logic behind that decision, considering she was the victim of Father Thomas Brule and also the demon Dagon, but I guess they did things differently back then. Number 2 on this list is the demon Riga. This story comes from another Reddit user. They say that they don't remember any of it, but this happened to them when they were only 2 years old. Apparently one evening this person, when they were only 2, was lying awake in bed and they started screaming at the top of their lungs. Now this isn't completely uncommon for a 2-year-old to do, but what happens next is, I'm going to quote their post here as they say, I got off the bed and started running in circles while screaming and crying in terror. It was not a nightmare since I was awake, and I was not playing nor demanding anything since I was just scared out of my mind. Nothing like this had ever happened before. I was the only child in the house. This went on for some random time at night and until dawn. It would only stop at dawn. I did this every single night, non-stop, for 6 months. End quote. Now that is definitely a strange thing for a 2-year-old to be doing, and quite demonic if you ask me. The parents knew that this was a big problem. Their child would claw and bite at them whenever they tried to calm him, and they weren't sure how to handle it. Eventually they decided that going to a priest was the right thing to do, but even they couldn't find the answer. They apparently visited as many priests as they could, but still the problem persisted. That was right up until one priest, while performing a ritual on this child, managed to extract some information. It turns out that our Reddit user was possessed by a demon, and that demon's name was Riga. They couldn't get a whole lot more information, however they did learn that Riga was an inhabitant of not only the child, but also the home. The parents understood exactly what this meant, and wasting no time at all, they moved houses. This clearly was the problem, because the second that they got to a new residence, the demonic possession of Riga ceased, and their baby, our Reddit user, was calm. Sometimes these demons will only possess us for a time, and when they get what they want, which in this case was for these people to leave their house, then they'll also leave. Number 1 on this list is the demon Balbarith. This demon was rampant in possessing people in the Aeon province possessions. Similar to some of the other cases that we've looked at today, this pandemic of possessions made its way through a convent of nuns. Clearly, these nuns really had it rough during the early 17th century. The first report to come out came from Amalen de Demandolx. She was an aristocrat who joined the Ursuline convent at Marseille in 1607. It wasn't long before she'd reported to the Mother Superior that she actually had an affair with Father Louis Goffrey, who was also at that convent. The Mother Superior was obviously shocked at this news and thought it best to remove Madeleine and send her to Aix. This was to get her away from Father Goffrey and distance her from the scandal. It was when she got to her new location though that she started to notice the symptoms of demonic possession. In 1609, Madeleine started to exhibit all of her classic telltale signs. This included convulsions, foaming at the mouth, speaking devilish languages, reacting strangely to religious paraphernalia. These symptoms spread like a disease to all of the other nuns that were close to Madeleine, and similarly to my other entries on this list, you immediately had a bunch of nuns that were now demonically possessed. These nuns were hit hard with these demonic possessions as well, with a lot of them speaking a voice that wasn't their own. The church responded swiftly and started performing exorcisms as best as they could. Most attempts though were unsuccessful. However, it was during one of these exorcisms in 1910 that Father Goffrey's name was thrown into the mix. Madeleine claimed that he seduced her and brought her to a demonic ritual. This ritual was used to summon the demon Balbarith, which then possessed Madeleine. Other nuns started to make the same claim, and soon Father Goffrey's name was completely run through the dirt. During a session of torture, he confessed to the crimes and was sentenced to death. This case of a demon possessing a group of nuns was the first one in France and set the precedent for the other two that I've previously spoken about. Number 5 on this list is the Battleisk. The Battleisk is a beast in Italian folklore that is said to annoy the living hell out of the villagers it's nearby. Bestiarium says, in the Val Carmonica, a valley in the central Italian Alps region, there is a local celebration which is connected to a legend about a mythical monster. This monster is the Battleisk, a creature with a huge head and large mouth, adorned with 2 tiny horns and 2 brightly glowing eyes. According to the local legend, the terrible Battleisk lived in the woods in Andrista, a small village. Actually, terrible is an overstatement. It did little harm, but it did constantly annoy the locals. As punishment, the beast was captured, as the locals used a beautiful girl as bait to trap and capture the lusty beast. It was fought by a hunchbacked folk hero. So they hold a festival for the demon thing every year. There's a parade and they get a costume for it made from goat skin. The whole village participates in it and it's a whole big affair that's going on. However, there are a few select elders who don't participate. Whilst everyone is out and about having fun, drinking, and making merry, this select group of elders is inside being very careful with what they do. Apparently, this group was around when this beast first came to being. They saw it firsthand, and they don't agree with the way that people are treating it. In their opinion, the legend has been thoroughly exaggerated, and this creature isn't as kind as everyone wants to believe. They are under the impression that constantly doing this year in and year out is going to anger the creature, and one year it will finally unleash its wrath upon the village. Now, no one knows if this is true or not, or if it's just a bunch of people being really paranoid. However, I would tend to believe the people who claim to have seen this thing firsthand, rather than those who are just looking for an excuse to get drunk. Number 4 on this list is Streiska. This is a demon very similar to a vampire that can be found in parts of Italy. Wikipedia says a Streiska is a usually female demon somewhat similar to vampires in Slavic and especially Polish folklore. People who were born with 2 hearts and 2 souls and 2 sets of teeth, the second one barely visible, were believed to be Strigoi. Somnambulics, or people without armpit hair, could also be seen as one. Furthermore, a newborn child with already developed teeth was also believed to be one. When a person was identified as a Streiska, they were chased away from human-dwelling places. During epidemics, people were getting buried alive, and those who managed to get out of their graves, often weak, ill, and with mutilated hands, were said to be Strigoi by others. It is said that Strigoi usually died at a young age, but according to belief, only one of their 2 souls would pass to the afterlife. The other soul was believed to cause the deceased Streiska to come back to life and prey upon living beings. These undead creatures were believed to fly at night in a form of an owl and attack nighttime travelers and people who had wandered off into the woods at night, sucking out their blood and eating their insides. Streiska were also believed to be satisfied with animal blood for a short period of time. Whatever version of the Streiska is proven to be correct, it really isn't good either way. They're either personally coming to kill and suck your blood, or they're indicating that we're about to die. The way that you protect yourself is pretty similar to vampires. Burning the body of one of these creatures or putting a stake through it are proven methods of getting rid of them. Also, for some reason, slapping it across the face with your left hand is said to help. Not sure if I want to be the one trying that method though.
In at number 3 we have Picolas. Picolas is a demon from the ancient inhabitants of Prussia, described as an angry and evil spirit, with the appetite for human blood. Picolas and Patalo were gods in the pagan Prussian mythology worshipped by the old Prussians. Most researchers believe both these gods were the same person, and were in charge of the underworld and the dead. This demon was first mentioned in 1418 by Bishop of Warmia in a letter to the Pope and chronicler Simon Grunau. In a letter to the Pope and chronicler Simon Grunau, who provided more details about Picolas. According to Simon, Picolas was one of the 3 gods portrayed on the flag and coat of arms of King Wideruto and worshipped in the temple of Ricciotto. He appears to look like an old man with a white beard and white headdress. He was scary and ruthless god of the dead. This demon would haunt and taunt the living if they disobeyed the pagan priests or buried the dead without proper sacrifices to the gods. Many other medieval writers believe in Simon's descriptions of the demon. In another writing, the Sadovian books, it mentioned 2 beings, Picolas, the god of hell and darkness, and Picolas, airborne spirit or devil. The same bear is also found in the church decrees of 1530. Many believe these 2 demons mentioned are just extended descriptions of Picolas. Caspar Heinenberger and later authors attempted to reconcile the accounts provided by Simon Grunau and the Sadovian book. In the 17th century, Christoph Harknock and Matthias Praetorius testified that people still believe in this demon, and many believe Picolas is in fact the devil. In at number 2 we have Bifrons. Bifrons is from the Earl of Jinistan, with 6 legions of demons under his command. He teaches sciences and arts and has knowledge of gems, woods and herbs. This demon has the ability to change corpses from their original grave into other places, sometimes putting magic lights on the graves that appear like candles. He first appeared as a monster but then changed his shape into that of a man to blend in with earthly people. Bifrons was originally the Roman god Janus and is often referred to as so. In ancient Roman religion and myth, Janus is the god of beginnings and transitions, also of gates, doors, passages, endings and time. He is also well versed in astrology and planetary influences, as well as geometry, herbology, mineralogy, and botany. He is usually depicted as having a monstrous appearance along with two faces, due to his ability to look into the future and the past. The Romans named the month of January in his honor. Janus presided over the beginning and ending of conflict, and hence war and peace. The doors of his temple were open in a time of war and closed to mark the peace. As a god of transitions, he has functions pertaining to birth, journeys, and exchange. Janus had a major presence in religious ceremonies throughout the years and was ritually invoked at the beginning of each one and heavily honored on many different occasions. Bifrons is mainly in charge of moving bodies from one grave to another, while hellish demon Muma takes over the souls. Accordingly, Bifrons has 26 legions of Jinnistan's army under his command and is the 46th spirit of the 72 Solomon imprisoned in a brass vessel. And finally, in at number 1 we have Krampus. One of the most popular demons coming from Europe is Krampus. He is a horned half-goat, half-man beast who terrorizes children throughout the Christmas season who have misbehaved. Assisting St. Nicholas, the pair visit the children on the night of December 25th each year, and St. Nick rewards the well-behaved children who have been good all year with gifts, while the badly behaved ones on the naughty list get a visit from Krampus and receive punishment from him. The origin of this demon is not directly known, but many believe this demon goes back centuries and originated in Germany, and since 1984 this demon has become known globally. Since the 19th century, during the Christmas season, many Europeans will exchange greeting cards featuring the Krampus demon. The feast of St. Nicholas is celebrated in parts on Europe on December 6th, and on the evening of December 5th is known as Krampus Night, where the wicked hairy devil appears on the streets, where he visits homes and businesses, wreaking havoc on unsuspecting humans. Many people believe Krampus has multiple appearances, but the most common is that he is hairy with black or brown fur, has hooves and the horns of a goat, as well as long pointed tongue hanging out and sharp fangs. There are festivals all throughout Europe held to celebrate Krampus, while many dress up in elaborate, horrifying costumes that resemble this demon. In the aftermath of the 1932 election in Austria, the Krampus tradition was prohibited by the Dollfuss regime and the Christian Social Party. In the 1950s, the government distributed pamphlets titled "Krampus is an Evil Man." Towards the end of the century, Krampus' popularity rose, and the festivals began and continue to this day. Young men dress up in Krampus costumes and roam the streets, frightening children with rusty chains and bells. Many of these festivals take place in Austria, Romania, Bavaria, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, and Croatia, just to name a few. We've all heard about Santa, and kids are constantly told if they have bad behavior, they will get coal for Christmas, but many don't realize that this has come from the legend of Krampus. This demon has become a global figure and is depicted in many horror films and has become a part of American pop culture.